DraftKings basketball breakdown. We got Bengals and Chiefs. This is episode 10.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. This is episode 10, Chiefs, Bengals. We're doing best ball team breakdowns based off of week 17 matchups. Today was cut day, Ellie. We are recording this on Tuesday, the 29th at about 10 p.m. And it seems like we've gotten all the news that we are going to get potentially. Our boy, Jonathan Taylor Thomas is out 4 weeks on PUP. He didn't get traded. That's a whole other story. I don't know what to think about that. Maybe somebody, a contending team has a running back injury and then there's some leverage to bring him in. I don't know what's going to happen. Thankfully, I'm not too overweight on him. I don't know how much do you have of him? Do you have quite a bit?
I think I have one lineup with Jonathan Taylor. I've intentionally been fading him, man. I just
smart.
I got lucky on this one.
Smart. All right, so the interesting thing with these teams is, first of all, with Kansas City, we have done a first look, like a way too early first look at the Thursday Night Football season opener, that showdown slate. If you haven't checked that out, it's up top or at the end of the video. But the key there was we were trying to talk about, predict, because we recorded that like 3 weeks ago, predict who's going to get, which wide receiver is going to get cut, and how these running backs going to work out. Based on what we're seeing, they kept 7 wide receivers. Like, they didn't cut anybody. They traded the Smith Marset dude, who's like a kick returner or punt returner dude, to Carolina. But they kept everybody. They kept Justin Watson. They kept Richie James, and as well as running backs. We've got CEH, we've got Pacheco, and we've got McKinnon. So that's interesting. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not all that shocked, man. I think a lot of people were expecting somebody to get cut. I thought my candidate, if anybody was to be, had to been between Justin Watson and maybe Richie James. But like, I still feel like that's kind of a stretch. You have Patrick Mahomes. All you need is somebody who can be fast and catch, right? So I think having a wealth of these guys is only going to benefit the Chiefs. And we talked about it on our All Too Early show. Like, I don't think I said, I'm pretty sure we talked about them retaining all of the wide receivers, just because, again, it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They'll find a way to use them in this offense. So I'm not surprised at all. I think one of the sneaky ones that maybe just got a little bit too much camp love was, what is it, Torian Prince's cousin or whoever it was. What's the backup running back that got cut today? Like,
something
he was
Prince.
getting some. Yeah, he was getting some love early on, right? But he had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you still got the Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. So I think they're pretty set at the running back position too. And I know we were kind of waiting on this show because we thought this news was going to be significant. It ended up just kind of being what we expected.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, they kept Justin Ross on the roster for a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In hopes that he would play.
Speaking of Justin Ross, I still think he's all these wide receivers are going in weird spots. We'll get to this in a minute, obviously, but Tony should be back. Let's actually talk injuries here. So obviously we know about Kadarius Toney with the meniscus injury. He's been recovering, but it seems like he's likely to play week 1, or at least suit up and get some action. I don't know how much he'll play, but look, even if he misses week 1. Should he be as the on paper number 1 wide receiver for the best offense in the NFL, be going at pick 110 or 105 or whatever? I don't think so. Obviously, there's some injury. Over time, he has not been very trustworthy when it's come to staying healthy. So that's probably what that is. But a guy like Justin Ross going in the 200s, like low 200s. Dude, if we fast forward to the end of this season and you told me Justin Ross was the number 2 wide receiver on this team, I'd be like, okay. So to me, him going that low is just silly. I know it's a little bit of a risk because we haven't seen him really in action, but he has like A+ upside. So when it comes to injuries, let's just talk briefly about that. So as of right now, like I just said, Tony should play. I'm actually, I already had a ton of Tony around that pick 75 range or something like that. Now I'm taking even more of him at pick 105 or ADP 105. Sky Moore has a minor finger injury, and then of course we got Joe Burrow, who gave us all a scare with that calf strain. Are you seeing anything else? And what are your thoughts on this Tony? Is that pushing you away from him? Like, what is your stance on Tony when it comes to best ball?
Tony, I thought was a little bit high, to be honest, when we were starting the year. I still want to get exposure to him just because Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback, but he's falling into a range just pick 105 right now. Like Sky Moore, his ADP skyrocketed when the Kadarius Toney injury happened. Now that we know that Tony is pretty much fine, like it's not going to be that serious, everything's just stabilized. Like they haven't reverted back. There's been no regression back to where they were. So now, like Kadarius Toney is, to me, is a great pick because you're still paying too much for Sky Moore. Like I still think Sky Moore at best is their second or third wide receiver, right? So I love Tony at this ADP, man. It's just also in a terrible zone.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so narrative wise, what are your thoughts here? Like players that have moved on, backup players. Is anything jump out to you here? Like honestly, like these teams seem very straightforward. You have a little bit of a question mark when it comes to the number 2 running back for the Bengals. They lost P. Ryan. Now, they've got a couple different guys that we could choose from there. They got a rookie. They've got, Chris Evans. Like, I don't quite know where to go there. I think at this point we kind of know that Chris Evans may be the number 2 guy over Chase Brown, but I was going heavy on Chase Brown. What else jumps out to you here when it comes to narratives and some players that have moved on and some, position battles that we need to pay attention to?
Well, I think that the one that stands out the most is just Samaje Perine moving on to the Broncos. He was getting a lot of work in the past game, and just he just had a lot of overall involvement in the offense last season. He was a pretty solid fantasy pick if you had him. So, what do we think is going to happen with that production? Do we think Joe Mixon's going to get it, or do we think it's going to be Chase Brown? Didn't they just trade for Pierre Strong too, or was that another team?
No,
I thought.
Wait, where did Pierre Strong go? All right, that's gonna annoy me. There's been so much news.
We'll get back to that.
There's been so much news. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I just think that there's reason to kind of consider that offense. And Herb Smith is another piece. The Bengals don't tend to target their tight ends in their offense, and maybe losing out on Samaje Perine. Those are some additional options that can go to Herb Smith. So it's just some stuff that we can look at throughout the year. And again, like Herb Smith, even if you want to stand by that narrative, like he's getting the ball from Joe Burrow, so there's still high quality opportunities.
Pierre Smith went to the Browns, or Pierre Strong went to the Browns.
Oh, same thing.
Same thing.
Just shittier version of the Bengals.
All right, let's get into this breakdown. Let's just do it.
Break it down.
All right, so we all know if you're lucky enough to get that pick 2, you're going to get Jamar Chase if you choose, or Justin Jefferson, depending on what that idiot number 1 dude would do. I've gotten Jamar Chase at 3 quite a bit, and sometimes I've even gotten him at 4, which is just absolutely insane. But what happens here, you get Jamar Chase, obviously Kelsey is right after that. Most of the high level dudes here are going in the first few rounds. And if you're trying to stack these teams up, obviously this is a popular stack. But if you're trying to stack these teams up, you probably need to make that decision pretty early on, because Jamar Chase going at 2, Kelsey going at 5. So if you get Kelsey, or if you get Jamar, you could kind of get similar, you could still get Mahomes there if you wanted to do that. You could get Kelsey, Mahomes, and then T. Higgins in some cases. The popular one is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then Burrow falls to 46. As you could see there, he was in that 39 range a few months back. And just because it's like, if you drafted Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, well, why is anybody going and grabbing Joe Burrow in that 30 range?
Right.
You're going to be the guy who probably gets him. Now, I say that, but how many times have you been sniped by Joe Burrow, but by somebody getting Joe Burrow and has absolutely no business taking it? Because look, if you get Joe Burrow naked at this point, you're getting Tyler Boyd, maybe the Travis Kelce guy gets Joe Burrow as a run back. That's the crazy thing, is there's so many different options for you here.
Right.
like I find myself having to check my exposure when I get Jamar Chase and go, how many lineups do I have with him and T. Higgins? How many lineups do I have with Patrick Mahomes? Before the draft starts, I'm trying to figure out ways to get different, because a lot of times you just end up with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow, but I don't mind that a ton, right? I mean, we're using a lot of draft capital to get 2 pass catchers from the same team. What are your thoughts on that? And like, what are you thinking as you start to grab these guys in the first and second rounds?
So I think it was a little bit more difficult when Joe Burrow was going a little bit earlier, right? And you had to make the decision if you're going to go Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, then Joe Burrow, and reach at that third pick. But now that you don't have to reach for that third pick, you can get Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, and T. Higgins, and still get Joe Burrow later on, and then you're not completely screwed,
Yeah.
right? You still have the premium Bengals stack, and you have a solid wide receiver too. If you just want to count those Bengals as one wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Not count on both of them every week. So I don't think it's bad to do anymore. I don't know that it was bad to do early on, right? We Joe Burrow's going to throw for 4,800 yards and 45 touchdowns. Like, he's going to be an MVP candidate this year. So unless you think that's going to Irv Smith, Tyler Boyd, or fucking Trenton Irwin, like you want to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So it's an easy stack to do. I also don't, because of the way it's set up now, I don't think you're too bad off if you want to go Jamar Chase, Patrick Mahomes, and T. Higgins. I've been doing a little bit of that kind of reverse stack with Miami, Baltimore, right? Why not Lamar Jackson, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill? This is the same thing to do. Like, you can literally just grab anybody you want from Patrick Mahomes' side, right? You can get a wide receiver with the last pick. You can get a wide receiver from pretty much every round of the draft after round 12, right? So, like, you're fine. There's just easy ways to stack this game, and we haven't even talked about any of the running backs.
Yeah, exactly. And look, if I don't get Chase or Kelsey, if I'm in a spot where Patrick Mahomes is there for me around that pick 20, sometimes I'll just take him if he falls a little bit. If he's right there, I'll just take him, because I know that I got so many damn options later in the draft. You can't say the same thing with Burrow. You got Tyler Boyd. Later on, you could throw him with the backup running back. You've got Irv Smith, but there's not a ton of options. That's why I have a shitload of Tyler Boyd, to be honest. Because if I'm looking for that run back for some KC stacks, I'll get Patrick Mahomes naked to start. I'll grab a Kadarius Toney. I'll grab a Sky Moore. I'll grab a McKinnon or whomever. And then there's Tyler Boyd right there. That's like, I want the run back. Absolutely. So I'm getting guys like Tyler Boyd. I'm getting guys like Chase Brown. Now I'm getting a little bit more of Chris Evans. So that's kind of where you're at. And when it comes to Joe Mixon here, I was completely full on fade of him until we figured out his legal status. It seems like he's going to be okay. Like, he's not going to get suspended. At least that's what it seems like. What are your thoughts on Mixon here? I actually am a little scared that I faded him the way I did, because I they don't have a solid number 2 guy. Realistically, they just don't at this point. Pirine was a much better option. And does Joe Mixon get a lot of those extra snaps that would be going to that number 2 guy?
So I don't have much of him, and that really just comes out of my exposure to the Bengals pass game in general, right? Like, I don't want to go Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, fucking Joe Mixon, right? That's just way too much draft capital in one offense in those early rounds. So that's impacting my overall exposure. That said, I like Joe Mixon. The issue is who he's going around, right? So if your pick comes up and you have Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, and Ramondre Stevenson on the clock, even Jonathan Taylor up until this news was at the same ADP, right? Those are the guys that have slipped down a little bit that you're competing with him against now. So I really think as we get closer to the season, Joe Mixon might even fall a little bit. If he gets back to like that Najee Harris, Aaron Jones range, that's a great range to take him. But like, I haven't been a Ramondre truth for this season, but like where he's at in comparison to Etienne and Joe Mixon, like, he's still the guy that I'm going to prioritize in that range right now.
Yeah, I agree. So like, something I've been trying to do is I'm not getting to every single draft. It's just depending on where I'm picking, depending on where the cards fall. I'm not getting to Chief stacks every single time. But what I'm trying to do with both of these teams, specifically KC, is grab as many one-offs as I can. If this was an optimizer, I would set min 1 KC, because I'm trying to, even if it's just a random one-off like Sky Moore or Tony or Rashi Rice or MVS, whoever, I want to get at least like one of these dudes on my team. I just feel like that's the way to go. Getting as much exposure to KC is important in my opinion. And same with Cincinnati. Like if I just get Jamar Chase by himself and then have a Rashi Rice run back later on, that's fine. Honestly, that's okay. And sometimes I've been getting in this weird, interesting range where I'll get Jamar Chase and I'll end up with like Viking stacks. Like I'll steal, if I'm picking ahead of the number 1 guy in some of the other rounds, I'll steal some of the Vikings guys. I'll steal Kirk Cousins randomly. So like having maybe a 1v1 or something to that effect of these two teams, I think is kind of interesting. And I'm trying to get at least one or maybe 1v1 in every lineup of these stacks. Are you doing something similar, or is it just kind of, it is what it is?
I'm getting to pieces where I can, but I do think that is an interesting approach, because this is just especially the way that the Bengals fall into place. Like you're usually getting the premium stack, or you're ending up with 2 or 3 of this offense, and just going a 1-1 might be different enough to, I don't know, not have the same premium Bengal stack in week 17 that everybody else has. So I don't need it, man. It's a good idea.
All right, so thoughts on Pacheco in this range? He's dropped about 11 spots. I don't know why. Not sure why. You've also got a guy, Jerick McKinnon here, who at the beginning of best ball, he wasn't signed, and he was in the 200 range, I believe. And now he's up in the 115, 116 area. I don't mind stacking both of these guys with Mahomes. Like if Pacheco's there, I'm just grabbing him because I'm going with teams, And also if I get Pacheco, it also allows me to maybe grab Justin Ross and have like maybe 2 pass catchers with Pacheco. You get to week 17, maybe Mahomes doesn't have an incredible game, but Pacheco goes the fuck off, and nobody's going to have that combination. Like that, those are certain things that like I'm kind of interested in doing. I know there's some negative correlation there, but we've talked about it. Grabbing teams instead of worrying about some individual players there can be an upside there. I don't know. Thoughts on all that? Thoughts on Mahomes and Pacheco together, even though negatively correlated, but you're getting all the points from the team basically.
Yeah, so I don't think negative correlation is all that bad in best ball. If you're getting the top fantasy scorers from the 2 top fantasy producers from the same team, then it works out fine, right? If Mahomes struggles a week and Pacheco has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, then you're going to survive still. So like when you're looking for raw points, I really don't think it's all that big of a deal. And I tend to prefer toward Jerick McKinnon, just because we know that he has a little bit more upside in the pass game. And just being quite frank, like the same reason I haven't gotten to the pass game with or the running game with the Bengals is similar over here. This is just an excellent pass game. I'm not as interested in the running backs, and I still think there's better value running backs that you can get 20, 30 picks later. And that said, right, like if I'm looking at anybody now from Kansas City, we need to watch Seth, right? His ADP is going to slip up, being officially making the team, right? They got 3 running backs. It's McKinnon, Pacheco, and Seth, and he's free. So I think that's going to be the guy that I'll be leaning through for kind of the rest of the draft here. Yeah, the Michael Piran got cut, so not bad there.
Yeah. And so CEH, I mean, we've talked about this. Like, I'm not necessarily super high on him, but if he's there for me, and usually he's the kind of guy that'll fall like 20 picks past ADP. People are just like, nah, I don't want him. And I'm always grabbing him. I rarely get him right at ADP, but I'm always grabbing him, past it. And I think there's a chance, look, his last year of his contract, they're going to use and abuse him. They have no reason not to. And plus, he's this is an audition for him to get to a team next year. He's pretty much a disappointment. He's a first-round pick on a Super Bowl team that, he had his moments, but he was never clearly that number 1 guy. That's why they went out and grabbed some of these other dudes. So CEH to me, in like, what is it, the 19th, 18th round there, is fine. Maybe he falls to the 19th round. I love grabbing him. Justin Ross at 205 though. Let's talk about this. So what are your expectations for Justin Ross? I know we all think this dude can be absolutely amazing, but he hasn't really played in the NFL yet. We've seen him in camp make some incredible catches. Why isn't his ADP moving up? Like, yeah, it moved up 13 spots, but why isn't he in this, maybe 180 range around Richie James? Are you telling me right now that Richie James has a more of a chance of outscoring Justin Ross on the season? I don't think that that's true.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I just don't think that people are hearing kind of his injury status and just don't have any faith in it. After all the noise that we've heard this summer, and this is including watching those highlight videos of him just absolutely dominating people, right? He's the only big receiver on that team. So just ignore all that stuff. They kept him on. They reserved a roster spot for him, put him on IR, whatever it is, for an entire season as an undrafted rookie. Right? Like they did that so that they could play him. Like what's the point of them cutting him? He's going to come in and be at worst your seventh wide receiver, but I still think Justin Ross is better than Justin Watson.
Oh yeah.
Right? So he has number 2 wide receiver on this team upside. And that's just that's kind of being aggressive, of course, but let's look at it in a vacuum. Like he is a free pick. If you get him at 205 ADP, he's your wide receiver 8 or 9. If you're relying on him on a week-to-week basis, you're already fucked. So there's no reason to sweat this pick. If you have him and he has 4 games where he has 600 yards and 6 touchdowns, yes, that's a little bit obscene, but this is the Chiefs we're talking about. Right? Kevin Curtis. You guys remember who the fuck Kevin Curtis is? He had 4 touchdowns. Go look it up. The same day Ronnie Brown had his crazy 5 touchdown game. Like we know what Andy Reid can do with these offenses. So let's don't sleep on this guy, man. I like him. He's going to be a last round pick. He's free.
When it comes to upside in this range, who's going around him? Obviously there's CEH. Do you have that pulled up?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I mean, like the players going around him in this range feel like to me like he's got incredible upside on the best offense in the league. So to me, I know we're talking a shitload about Justin Ross, and by the way, he's $1,000 on Showdown for that opening night. I'm gonna lose all my money because of him. But who's going around that range?
So you got a couple interesting ones. You got Jerome Ford, Darius Slayton, Hayden Hurst, Paris Campbell, Kareem Hunt, and Seth.
That's interesting.
So
that's interesting.
I think Kareem Hunt is probably the only other one that I'm getting a shitload of exposure to, and that's just because I think he'll end up as RB1 on the Colts for a while.
Could be.
Justin Ross, I think is a great pick in that range.
All right, so let's talk briefly about Rashee Rice here. So he didn't have like the best camp. He's dropped some big balls in these preseason games. I mean, he's a rookie. Get it out of your system now, But look, if Mahomes doesn't trust the guy, he's not going to throw to him. What are your thoughts on Rashee Rice? I think Rashee Rice, to me, I know this sounds crazy, but I think he's more of a question mark than Justin Ross is, or MVS or Richie James.
Yeah, I honestly agree with you. I think that he's very much like this year's Sky Moore. I think like Sky Moore's actually likely to have a breakout season, but with Kadarius Toney, with Justin Ross, and even Justin Watson, like we know that Patrick Mahomes has a little bit of a rapport with him. So I just don't know. Rashee Rice has had his struggles. Like he's been dropping some wide open passes in preseason. Maybe he kind of just gets limited reps and it kind of slows his development. And again, just the people around him. Let's see, you got Raheem Mostert, who is all of a sudden an amazing pick, right? Yeah. Marvin Mims, who again is another pretty solid pick, and then Jacoby Myers, who is fucking meh. I don't know. Derek Carr, Rashad Penny. So there is some reason to get to him, but like there's still other guys that I'm looking at that if they're in that range, I'm automatically taking. Like I'm not even thinking about it with Rashee.
Yeah, and there's no reason to reach for Rashee. Like in my opinion, I do. It can get out of hand if you're trying to get KC runbacks or if you're trying to add guys to your stacks with Mahomes. It can go downhill real quick because people do reach for these guys. And you saw it a bunch when the schedule got released and we saw week 17, I wasn't even touching these stacks because everybody was reaching. But now, I've run into situations where I have Patrick Mahomes and I've got McKinnon and then I've got maybe Jamar Chase as a run back. That's fine. Because I'm not going to go out of my way and go 20 picks ahead of ADP to get a guy like Rashee Rice. It's not going to happen. So last guy I want to talk about here on the Chiefs, and then we'll end this with some Cincy talk. Thoughts on MVS? He's been in the system. He's got a little bit of a rapport with Mahomes. He could have a breakout season as well. I mean, he's one of these home run type dudes. I honestly kind of like him in this spot.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna say this because it's too easy. Like everybody on the Chiefs, because their quarterback's Pat Mahomes, can have a breakout season. MVS might quite possibly be like the most boring wide receiver that I think has ever existed.
Yeah.
So if he can't make it work in an offense where he was supposed to be the number one for what was it? The Packers. Like he was supposed to be there when in his youth, when he was in his prime, right? So I just don't know. Like this team's going to prioritize Kadarius Toney, and then I think they're just going to do the Skagit shit with Sky Moore and just all these guys that they have. Justin Ross, MBS isn't my guy. And again, 138 ADP. He's in a range. There's other guys that I'm interested in. I'm still looking at the Mims, Mostert, even if not Ezekiel Elliott's getting interesting again. Eli Mitchell, I still like getting a little bit of exposure to them. And the way that I've been drafting, I'm getting to a second quarterback here. I might be getting a little more Jordan Love. So I don't know, man. He's just in an awkward range where I'm not really worth it. I'm not sure it's worth investing in MBS anymore.
So speaking of investing, I know it's I know this is going to be around 18, 19, 20, depending on where they fall. But Chase Brown, Chris Evans. Are you interested in, I was getting a shitload of Chase Brown because he's like a dynamic rookie and we don't know what his upside is, but now the news has not really been in favor of him as far as what his playing time is going to be. Seems like Chris Evans can be that number 2 guy. But do I want any of these guys? Am I expecting any of these guys to get a shitload of volume? I don't know, man. Where are you at on Chase Brown, Chris Evans?
I think there's other guys that you can kind of target. To be honest, I had a little bit more Chase Brown early on, and I honestly still think he's fine, especially if you're doing like a 0 running back build where you're getting 6, 7 running backs kind of late. So if he's one of your pieces, then I think that's fine. I don't think Joe Mixon's going to see any suspension or anything like that. I mean, what he got, his legal issues are fine. So but let's keep in mind, they did draft Chase Brown. They did feel comfortable not keeping P. Ryan, right? They cut, or they're probably ended up cutting, or they did release or waived Travion Williams.
I think he's still on the team. I think as of today,
they're not going to do that stuff if they're not totally confident that. And Joe Mixon's had some health concerns, right? So maybe his durability is something that they're going to want to ease him into as well. So they're not doing that unless they think Chase Brown and Chris Evans can pick up the load, right? And I don't think Chris Evans can do that long term. If he did, then if he could, they wouldn't have had as much. I don't know if they would have played him last year over P. Ryan a little bit.
Yeah.
So look, I think Chase Brown's fine. He's going to get some run, especially later on in the season. Closer in those playoff weeks, I think he'll be fine.
I think right now you stack up Chris Evans because you probably haven't been drafting him this whole summer. I think just get some exposure to him. All right, let's look at a lineup here. Ellie, I didn't get a chance to load your lineup in. My bad. This is one I did yesterday. This is a 0 RB build, wide receiver 5 by round 10, which is a given for me. Elite tight end. So I got Travis Kelce at pick 8. That happens randomly. Travis Kelce will fall to 10. I don't know why, but I'm taking him every time. If he's one pick past ADP, if he's at ADP, I'm taking him. Patrick Mahomes in the second round reached a couple picks for that, obviously. And then so here's an interesting thing I did here. I didn't plan on this, but I got Keenan Allen at pick 32 there, and Justin Herbert fell 6 spots. So I this is probably not ideal. But I got 2 quarterbacks, and I got them all in the first 5 rounds. Now, that's probably a lot of draft capital. I don't know if I would do this again, but I kind of like it. It's kind of interesting. These different weird stack combinations, if I can get this down to week 17, you never know what can happen. So I got Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey. Who else did I get here? I got Richie James and Kadarius Toney. And then I ran back with Chris Evans and who else? Cincinnati and Tyler Boyd. See, and that's typically what ends up happening. Like Tyler Boyd's like my third highest owned wide receiver, which is scary. But in the 12th round, it's not the end of the world. And if you look at all that green, the ADP closing line value, I reached for Patrick Mahomes, but I was getting all the value from there on out. I've got a Charger stack with 2 run backs. I did get Judy, but Judy was not added to the PUP list. He wasn't added to IR. I know that he's, that injury can be a little scary and can linger. But in the 6th round, you got a number 1 pass catcher for a team that I think should be pretty good on offense this year, like on paper. Anyways, thoughts here. And look, let's briefly talk about some other news here that we found out today. Cardinals in full tank mode. I'm grabbing like Marquise Brown like way later now, like in the 8th, 9th round sometimes. Are you okay with Marquise Brown in this range? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, dude. Like, I don't know, man. Like, are they going to throw for? Maybe I'm a little delusional and overthinking it, but like they're going to throw for 2,500 yards, right? They're a professional NFL team. Like someone's got to fucking catch those. Like Marquise Brown's probably the best player on the field now outside of James Conner, right? So I don't know, man. Like I think it's fine. I like Hollywood Brown. I really like what you did with that lineup there, man. I think Jerry Jeudy going as late as he is. I hopefully it's not confirmation bias, but I support it 100%. I have a shitload of Jerry Jeudy, man. So like I'm hoping that he's fine.
Me too. Marquez Callaway got cut too. So like, who's catching balls for these guys? Like, is Sutton gonna get 200 targets this year? Like, is Dulcich gonna get 200, like 100 targets? I don't know who's catching balls for these guys. Anyways, Bengals Chiefs team breakdown. We're gonna try to do our goal for these team breakdowns. We have 6 shows left. I want to get the rest of these done going into basically like by Monday. I want to have all these done. So hit subscribe, like this video. If you're interested in seeing more of this, let us know what teams you want to see next. You want to do Baltimore and Miami, actually?
Let's do it.
I mean, we could do pretty much any teams we want at this point. Like Miami is probably not getting JT at this point, and if they do get him, it's probably going to be in a couple weeks into the season at worst.
By the deadline.
Yeah. Anything else to talk about here, bro?
No, man. Draft Justin Watson or Justin Ross. Fuck it. Draft anybody on the Chiefs,
Justin
man.
Watson. Hey, he's still on the team, man. As a 20th rounder going into week 17, that dude could absolutely score 2 touchdowns. We'll see you guys maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Subscribe.